Oxford when it needs to raise money, they sell off wine from the wine cellars. And so they would bring these wine bottles, particularly the whites, like out from the cellar, and they would place them in front of the fellows, and then let the fellows, they did this competition once to see like, oh, let the senior fellows and the incoming fellows, which he was one, were junior fellows, let them judge the wine. And here's what he had to say about that. So he talks about that in the context of like games, right? Where he's like, he's at this plate now where he's like, taste of gasoline. That's what he wants. He wants these things that like these games that will like shock the system. And so I was asking you, Danny, where do you feel like you fit on that like continuum of your like development as someone who plays games? Are you like, gasoline is an abhorrent taste and no one should have it, or like, oh, gasoline perks up my senses, it's doing something interesting here?
Well, I would like to think that I have a healthy amount of gasoline in my diet. I turn toward baijiu, and lately I've been thinking about experimenting with eau de vie, which are just like pure distillates. So, and I think in games is similar. I think it's about part of a diet though, right? Like I still love like my big AAA. I guess that would be the palatability of like $2 Chuck, like a AAA game that is intensely palatable, where like I feel like having some gasoline, like what I like about that example is that the gasoline came up after sampling 24 other bottles. And I think like the gasoline only like has that kind of potency or that kind of like shock effect if you also have like been tasting like overly sweet wines for too long, and then your tongue is like thirsting for something else. I don't know. What's that like for you? Like, I know that there's some people who are just like pure aesthetes who want like, I want only the gasoline. I want like only difficulty, like, sickos to get into like Mario Kaizo, for example. Like that's like maybe the most like gasoline fueled platformer.
I mean, I think a lot of times the conversation kind of revolves around like difficulty, and I think this is like an aesthetic question about like whether or not like is games main language is difficulty, is that, and you can make an argument whether it is or not, but I think when we talk about sort of games that are like gasoline, we often think of them as being like difficult mechanically. I mean, I probably would like to expand the aperture, just because I do think this idea of games being difficult or abhorrent, it doesn't just have to be, I don't think it just has to be difficulty. I think there's other ways that games can be difficult. They're not necessarily like mechanically complex, but they can challenge you obviously like in some other ways. I don't necessarily know if that's true. Seeing an interview with Christopher Nolan, he was talking about his love of the Fast and Furious franchise, for example, which I also love. I'm a big fan of that franchise. And so I think you can kind of go in opposite directions, where it's like some people are like, oh my gosh, the only thing I watch so many films. The only thing that gives me joy is like watching very, very, very specific genre that's like nearly unwatchable. And then some people go in the opposite end, which is like, honestly, so much of my consumption is work. And so I really want things that are going to be like really, really easy. So I think the fact that Bennett has moved in that direction for his free time, I think more speaks to the kind of like person he is and the kind of player he is. But I don't think it necessarily is a prerequisite for, I don't think it's a prerequisite, or it's a natural outgrowth of literacy. I don't think it has to be. You don't have to kind of like move in that direction. So yeah.
And I think so there's that the difficulty side, but I think there's also like something on the game developer side that was interesting that came up in your interview around what he calls good hands.
Yeah,